The silence in the restaurant wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. It was the kind of silence that usually precedes a gunshot. Dominic Cavallo, the man who held the city of Chicago in a chokehold, sat frozen at table 4. His hand, usually steady enough to pull a trigger without blinking, was trembling. Why? Because a trembling 20-year-old waitress had just placed a glass of water on his table, pointed at the heavy gold signet ring on his finger, and whispered 6 words that would burn his empire to the ground. "Sir, my mother has one too." The rain in Chicago didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Inside Leone's, a dimly lit Italian steakhouse on the edge of the Gold Coast, the atmosphere was manufactured warmth. Mahogany paneling, low jazz, and the smell of garlic and expensive truffle oil masked the scent of damp wool coats. Maya Linley wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, careful not to smudge the lipstick her manager, Mr. Henderson, insisted all female staff wear. Red implies passion. Maya, he'd said with a sleazy wink that made her skin crawl. And passion sells wine. Maya didn't have passion. She had $38 in her bank account, a rent notice that was 3 days overdue, and a mother at home whose memory was dissolving like sugar in hot tea. "Table 4, Henderson barked, snapping his fingers near Maya's ear. "VIP, don't mess it up, and fix your apron." Maya straightened the white fabric. "Who is it?" "Dominic Cavallo. If he asks for anything, you give it to him. If he doesn't speak, you don't speak. If he looks at you, you look at the floor. Go." Maya's stomach tightened. Everyone knew the name. Dominic Cavallo wasn't just a mobster. In this city, he was gravity. He was the reason the garbage trucks ran on time, and the reason certain warehouses burned down in the middle of the night. He was 50 years old, notorious, and rumored to be a widower who had never remarried because his heart had turned to stone the night his wife died in a car bombing 20 years ago. She picked up the water pitcher and the basket of fresh bread. She walked toward table 4, situated in the most private alcove of the restaurant. 2 men in dark suits stood near the alcove's entrance, scanning the room with eyes that didn't blink enough. They stepped aside as Maya approached. Dominic Cavallo sat alone. He was undeniably handsome in a terrifying, predatory way. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than Maya would make in 5 years. His hair was silver-streaked, black swept back, and his eyes were dark, intelligent, and utterly devoid of warmth. He was reading a document, his brow furrowed. "Good evening, sir," Maya said, her voice shaking slightly. She hated how weak she sounded. "Water." Dominic didn't look up. He just tapped a finger on the linen tablecloth. Maya poured. The ice clinked softly against the crystal. She placed the breadbasket down. As she reached across to adjust the silverware, her eyes caught the glint of gold on his left hand. It wasn't a wedding band. It was a pinky ring, a heavy antique signet ring. The gold was worn down by time, but the crest was unmistakable. It was an intricate engraving of a split sword, wrapped in a blooming rose set against a shield of onyx. Maya froze. The picture hovered in mid-air. She knew that ring. She had seen it 1,000 times. She had played with it as a toddler. She had cleaned it with a toothbrush when her mother's hands became too arthritic to do it herself. It was the ring her mother kept in the velvet box under the floorboards, the one she cried over on the nights she thought Maya was asleep. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Without thinking, bypassing the survival instinct that screamed at her to run, Maya spoke. "Sir." Dominic Cavallo stopped reading. He slowly raised his head. His eyes locked onto hers. They were like the barrels of a gun. I didn't ask for a conversation. Maya couldn't breathe, but her finger moved on its own, pointing toward his hand resting on the table. "That ring," she whispered. "Sir, my mother has one too." The reaction was instantaneous. The air left the alcove. Dominic's face, previously a mask of bored indifference, drained of color. He looked like he'd been struck by lightning. His hand twitched instinctively, covering the ring, then stopped. "What did you say?" His voice was a low rumble, dangerous and quiet. "My mother," Maya stammered, realizing she had crossed a line she couldn't see. "She has that same ring. The sword and the rose. She keeps it hidden." Dominic stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor, a harsh sound that made the two bodyguards turn instantly. He towered over her. He was taller than he looked on the news. "What is your name?" he demanded. "Maya. Maya Linley." "Linley?" He tested the word, tasting it. It clearly meant nothing to him. He leaned in closer, invading her personal space. She could smell sandalwood tobacco and cold rain. "Who is your mother?" "Grace." Maya said, her back hitting the wall of the alcove. "Grace Linley." Dominic stared at her. He was searching her face, dissecting her features. He looked at her eyes, almond-shaped and green. He looked at the curve of her jaw. For a second, the terrifying mask cracked, and Maya saw something else underneath. Agony. Pure, unadulterated agony. "Impossible," he breathed. He reached into his jacket pocket. Maya flinched, thinking he was reaching for a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a thick wad of cash and threw it on the table. "You're done working for the night," Dominic said. It wasn't a suggestion. "I can't leave. My manager—" "Your manager will do what I tell him to do." Dominic signaled to his men. "Bruno, get the car around back. Now." He turned back to Maya. "You're coming with me." "No," Maya said, finding a spark of courage. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Dominic looked at her, and a strange, sad smile touched his lips. It was terrifyingly gentle. "You have your mother's stubbornness, but you don't understand, child. If she has that ring, you are in more danger than you can possibly imagine. And if she is who I think she is, then I have been mourning a ghost for 20 years. The ride in the back of the armored Cadillac Escalade was silent. Maya sat pressed against the door, her hand gripping the handle, ready to jump if the car slowed down. But the child locks were on. She was trapped with the most dangerous man in Chicago. Dominic sat on the opposite side, staring out the tinted window at the blurring city lights. He hadn't spoken since they left the restaurant. He was twisting the ring on his finger round and round. Maya's heart was hammering against her ribs. She thought of her mother, Grace, sitting in their small, drafty apartment in the Rogers Park neighborhood. Grace, who sometimes forgot what year it was. Grace, who screamed if the toaster popped too loudly. "She told me my father died in a factory accident," Maya said, suddenly breaking the silence. "Before I was born." Dominic didn't look at her. "Is that what she said?" "Yes, she said he was a good man, hard-working." "He was hard-working," Dominic murmured. "But he wasn't good." He finally turned to face her. In the passing streetlights, he looked older. "How old are you, Maya?" 20. Dominic closed his eyes for a moment, doing the math. 20. The fire was 20 years and 4 months ago. What fire? The fire that took my wife and my unborn child. The air in the car grew heavy. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I don't understand. What does this have to do with my mother's ring? Dominic sighed, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of his soul. That ring is a custom design. Only 2 were ever made. One for me, and one for my wife, Elena. It was the crest of the family we were going to build together. The sword for protection, the rose for beauty. When she died, the ring was never found. We assumed it melted or was lost in the rubble. He looked at Maya intensely. If your mother has that ring, she is either a thief who stole it from a corpse, or she is Elena. My mother's name is Grace, Maya insisted, though her voice wavered. She's frail. She has early-onset dementia. She doesn't remember much of her past. Trauma does that to the mind, Dominic said softly. It builds walls to keep the horror out. The car slowed down. They weren't in a rich neighborhood anymore. They were in Rogers Park, pulling up to the peeling brick apartment complex where Maya lived. How did you know where I live? Maya asked, alarmed. I know everything, Maya, or I thought I did. Dominic opened the door. Lead the way. You can't just barge in. She's scared of strangers. I'm not a stranger, Dominic said, his voice cracking. I'm her husband. They walked up the 3 flights of stairs. The hallway smelled of boiled cabbage and old carpet. Maya fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking so badly she dropped them. Dominic picked them up. His large manicured hand brushed hers. His skin was burning hot. He unlocked the door and pushed it open gently. The apartment was small but tidy. A knitted blanket was thrown over the worn sofa. The TV was on low volume, playing an old game show. Sitting in the rocking chair by the window was a woman. Her hair was grey and thin, pulled back in a loose bun. She was staring out at the street lamp, rocking back and forth. Mom, Maya called out softly, stepping inside. I'm home early. Grace didn't turn. Did you bring the milk, Maya? The tea is too bitter without milk. Maya stepped aside, revealing Dominic standing in the doorway. He looked like a giant in the small room. He looked like a bull in a china shop, terrified he would break the world. Dominic took a step forward. The floorboards creaked. Grace stopped rocking. Elena, Dominic whispered. The name hung in the air. Grace's head snapped toward the sound. For a moment, her eyes were cloudy, confused. She looked at the man in the suit. She looked at the silver in his hair, the cut of his jaw. Then clarity, sharp, terrifying clarity, flooded her face. She gasped, a sound of pure terror. She scrambled up from the chair, knocking it over. She backed away until she hit the wall. Her hands trembling as she reached for her neck, where the ring hung on a hidden chain beneath her blouse. No, Grace whimpered. No, no, no. You found us. You promised you wouldn't look. Elena. Dominic stepped closer, tears pooling in his eyes. I didn't. I thought you were dead. I buried you. You killed me, Grace screamed, her voice shrill and unrecognizable to Maya. You and your life, you killed everything. Maya rushed to her mother, grabbing her shoulders. Mum, calm down. What are you talking about? Grace looked at Maya, her eyes wide with hysteria. He's the devil, Maya. Run, you have to run. Dominic stopped. The pain on his face was replaced by confusion. Elena the car bomb. It was the Rossi family. I hunted them down. I killed them all for you. I avenged you. The Rossi family didn't plant that bomb. Dom. Grace spat the dementia vanishing under the adrenaline of the moment. I did. The silence that followed was louder than the scream. Dominic stood frozen. "What? I planted it," Grace sobbed, collapsing into Maya's arms. "I had to vanish. It was the only way to save the baby. The only way to save Maya from you." Maya looked from her mother to the Mafia boss. She looked at Dominic's face, which was crumbling as the truth hit him. "You..." Dominic looked at Maya. "You are my daughter." Grace pulled Maya tight against her chest. "She is nothing to you. You are a monster, Dominic. You deal in death. I wanted her to have a life. I would have protected her." Dominic roared, the anger returning. "I would have burned the world for her." "That's the problem," Grace yelled back. "You burn everything you touch. Look at you. You're still wearing the ring. You're still married to the blood." Suddenly, the window behind Grace shattered. A small canister hissed as it skidded across the floorboards. Smoke began to pour out instantly. "Get down!" Dominic shouted, his instincts overriding his shock. He dove toward Maya and Grace, covering them with his body. Gunfire erupted from the street below, tearing through the drywall. "Bruno!" Dominic yelled into his lapel microphone. "We're under attack. Get the team up here." But the earpiece only crackled with static. Dominic looked at Maya, his eyes fierce. "We have to move. Now. If you want your mother to live, you listen to me." Maya looked at the man she had just served water to an hour ago. She looked at her mother, who was clutching the ring on her necklace. Her mundane life of waitressing and paying bills was over. "Who is shooting at us?" Maya screamed over the noise of the bullets. Dominic pulled his own gun from a shoulder holster, a sleek black pistol. He checked the chamber. "The past," Dominic growled. "It seems someone else found out you were alive before I did." The Rogers Park apartment, once a sanctuary of quiet poverty and forgotten memories, had turned into a kill box. Dominic Cavallo moved with a speed that defied his age. He didn't look like a businessman anymore. He looked like a soldier who had spent 20 years in the trenches of a concrete war. He flipped the heavy oak table, the one Maya had done her homework on since 3rd grade, creating a makeshift barricade, just as the front door splintered inward under the force of a battering ram. "Kitchen!" Dominic roared, firing 2 suppression shots blindly through the smoke toward the doorway. The answering fire chewed up the plaster walls, sending white dust raining down like snow. "Go to the fire escape now." Grace was frozen. Her hands clamped over her ears. Her eyes squeezed shut. The trauma of her past had collided violently with her present, shattering her composure. Maya didn't think. She reacted. She grabbed her mother's arm, her grip bruising. "Mom!" "Move!" Maya screamed, dragging Grace toward the kitchen window. They scrambled over the linoleum floor. Maya shoved the window up the rusted tracks, protesting with a screech that was swallowed by the gunfire. The cold Chicago rain lashed at her face. "Out, Maya, go!" Dominic was backing toward them, firing methodically. Pop, pop, pop. Each shot was calculated. He wasn't spraying bullets. He was conserving them. Maya climbed onto the metal grate of the fire escape. She reached back to pull her mother through. Grace stumbled her knee, catching on the sill, but she scrambled out her breath, coming in ragged gasps. Dominic was the last one out. He vaulted through the window just as a shotgun blast decimated the kitchen sink, sending a geyser of water into the air. He slammed the window shut, shattered glass crunching under his boots, and grabbed Maya's shoulder. "Down. Don't look back. Don't stop." They descended the metal stairs, the iron slippery with rain and moss. Above them, men were shouting in the apartment. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping over their heads. "They're on the escape," a voice shouted from above. Dominic didn't hesitate. He aimed his pistol upward and fired twice at the light source. The light shattered, followed by a scream and the sickening sound of a body hitting the metal grating. "Keep moving," Dominic barked, pushing Grace and Maya forward. They reached the alleyway. It was a narrow, garbage-strewn passage between two brick buildings. A black van screeched to a halt at the mouth of the alley, blocking their exit. Maya's heart stopped. "They found us." "That's not them," Dominic said, his chest heaving. "That's Bruno." The side door of the van slid open. Bruno, the massive bodyguard from the restaurant, was behind the wheel, his face pale and sweating. "Boss, we're compromised. The perimeter is gone. Get them inside." Dominic shoved Grace toward the open door. As Grace scrambled in, a figure stepped out from the shadows of the dumpster behind them. He wore a ski mask and held a suppressed submachine gun. Maya saw him first. "Behind you." Dominic spun around, but he was a fraction of a second too slow. The gunman fired. Dominic grunted, his body jerking violently as a bullet tore through his left shoulder. But even as he was hit, his momentum carried him through. He raised his right hand and fired a single shot directly into the gunman's center of mass. The attacker dropped instantly. "Dad!" The word ripped out of Maya's throat before she could stop it. It was the first time she had ever said it to a living man. Dominic looked at her, his eyes wide with shock despite the pain. Blood was already soaking through the shoulder of his expensive suit, turning the charcoal fabric black. "Get in the car," he snarled through gritted teeth, shoving her inside. He dove in after her, slamming the door shut. "Drive, Bruno, go." The van peeled out of the alley tires, smoking against the wet asphalt. Bullets pinged against the rear doors, metal on metal, but the armored plating held. Bruno drove like a madman, swerving into oncoming traffic, running red lights, putting as much distance between them and the apartment as possible. Inside the back of the van, the silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of heavy breathing and the rhythmic thump-thump of the windshield wipers. Dominic slumped against the wall of the van, clutching his shoulder. Blood was seeping between his fingers, dark and thick. "You're shot," Maya said, her voice trembling. She looked around the van for a first aid kit. She found a white box under the seat and popped it open. "I've had worse." Dominic grunted, his face graying. He looked at Grace, who was curled in a ball on the floor, rocking back and forth. "Elena, look at me." Grace looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She looked at the blood on his hand, and a strange expression crossed her face. It wasn't fear anymore. It was the muscle memory of a mob wife. She crawled over to him, her hands steady now. She took the gauze from Maya. "Move your hand, Dom." "You remember," Dominic whispered, watching her face as she pressed the gauze into the wound. "I remember everything," Grace said bitterly. "I remember the blood. I remember the stitching. I remember waiting by the door at 3 a.m., wondering if you were coming home in a car or a box." She applied pressure, and Dominic hissed in pain. "Why?" Dominic asked, his voice losing strength. "Why did you run?" "We owned the city. You were safe." "Safe." Grace laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "Dom, you came home one night with blood on your collar that wasn't yours. I was 3 months pregnant. I realized that no matter how much money we had, our child would never be just a child. She would be a target. Or worse, she would become you." She looked at Maya, who was watching them with wide, terrified eyes. "I wanted her to worry about math tests and boys," Grace said, tears streaming down her face. Not bulletproof glass and kidnapping insurance. I wanted her to be Maya Linley, not Maya Cavallo. Dominic looked at his daughter. He really looked at her. He saw the cheap waitress uniform, the scuffed shoes, the exhaustion in her posture. And look where she is now, Dominic rasped. In the back of a getaway van, bleeding out with a father she doesn't know. Because you found us, Grace shouted. We were fine. We were poor. But we were alle. You were stripping sobles for tips, Dominic shouted back, then coughed, wincing. My daughter serving water to men who aren't fit to shine her shoes. Those men don't shoot at us, Dominic. Stop it, Maya screamed. The shout silenced them both. Maya was shaking her hands, clenched into fists. Just stop, she said, her voice cracking. My whole life of 20 years has been a lie. You told me my dad was dead. You told me we had no family, and you... She turned to Dominic. You're the monster everyone talks about on the news. You're the reason people are afraid to go out at night. She looked between them. I don't know who either of you are right now. Dominic's expression softened. He reached out with his uninjured hand, trying to touch her cheek, but he pulled back at the last second, afraid to dirty her with the blood on his fingers. We are going to a safe house, Dominic said, his voice dropping to a command tone, trying to regain control of the situation. Bruno, head to the lake house. No one knows about it, not even the capos. Yes, boss, Bruno called from the front. Dominic leaned his head back against the metal wall, his eyes closing. We will figure this out, Maya. I promise you. But first we have to survive the night. Maya watched the blood drip from his sleeve onto the floor mat. She realized with a sickening lurch that she didn't want him to die. Monster or not, stranger or not, he had just taken a bullet for her. And that complicated everything. The lake house was a misnomer. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress of glass and steel, cantilevered over a private section of Lake Michigan, about an hour north of the city. It was isolated, surrounded by dense forest on 3 sides, and the churning dark water on the 4th. Bruno drove the van into an underground garage that sealed shut with a heavy hydraulic hiss behind them. The silence that followed was ringing in Maya's ears. Dominic refused a stretcher. He walked out of the van under his own power, though he leaned heavily on Bruno. They took a private elevator up to the main floor. When the doors opened, Maya gasped. The living room was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the black void of the lake. The furniture was white leather, pristine and cold. A fireplace the size of a small car roared to life with the flip of a switch. Get the medical kit from the master bath, Dominic ordered Bruno, and secure the perimeter. Sensors only, no guards. I don't want anyone knowing we are here. Bruno nodded and disappeared down a hallway. Dominic collapsed onto one of the white sofas, ruining the leather with his blood-stained suit. He shrugged the jacket off, wincing, revealing a white dress shirt soaked red. Grace stood by the window, hugging herself, looking out at the darkness. She looked small and frail again, the adrenaline wearing off, leaving the dementia and confusion to creep back in at the edges. Is this where we live now? Grace whispered. It's too big. The ghosts will get lost in here. Maya ignored her mother for a moment and walked to Dominic. She grabbed a pair of scissors from the first aid kit Bruno had left on the table. I'll do it, Maya said, her voice steady. Dominic looked up at her in surprise. You don't have to... Mom's checking out, Maya said bluntly, nodding toward Grace. And Bruno is securing the doors. That leaves me. Sit still. She cut the shirt open. The bullet had passed through the fleshy part of the shoulder. It was messy, but it hadn't hit the bone or an artery. You need stitches, Maya said, examining the wound. She had learned basic first aid because they couldn't always afford a doctor for Grace's minor accidents. "Do it," Dominic said. He watched her face as she worked. She bit her lip when she concentrated. Elena used to do that. "Who attacked us?" Maya asked, pouring antiseptic over the wound. Dominic didn't flinch, though his jaw muscle jumped. "I don't know," Dominic admitted. "That is what worries me. Only 3 people knew I was going to Leone's tonight. My scheduler Bruno and my consigliere Silas." "Could it be this Silas guy?" Maya threaded the needle. "Silas has been with me since before you were born. He is my brother in everything but blood. He stood by me when I thought Elena died. He helped me build the empire." "People change," Maya said, piercing the skin. "Money changes people. Power changes them." "You sound like a cynic." Dominic noted a faint smirk playing on his lips. "For a 20-year-old? I've been a waitress for 3 years, sir. I see people at their worst. Hungry, drunk, and rude. You learn to read people." "Don't call me sir," Dominic said softly. "Please." Maya tied off the last stitch and snipped the thread. She didn't reply. She wasn't ready to call him Dad. She wasn't even ready to call him Dominic. She stood up and walked over to her mother. Grace was tracing her finger against the cold glass of the window. "Mom." Maya touched her arm. "Are you okay?" Grace turned. Her eyes were lucid again, sharp and hard. "He's going to get us killed, Maya. I tried to warn you. The world he lives in, it's cancer. It eats everything good." "We can't leave right now," Maya reasoned. "Whoever shot at us knows where we lived. We have nowhere else to go." "We can run," Grace insisted. "We have the stash, the emergency fund." "The $300 in the cookie jar?" Maya asked gently. "Mom, that won't get us to the state line." Dominic stood up, buttoning a fresh shirt he had retrieved from a hidden closet. He poured himself a glass of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. "Grace is right about one thing," Dominic said, turning to face them. "You aren't safe. Not until I find out who ordered that hit." He walked over to a massive oak desk in the corner of the room and opened a laptop. He typed in a complex password. "I'm accessing the security feeds from the restaurant and the street outside your apartment," Dominic explained. "I need to see faces." Maya walked over, drawn by curiosity. On the screen, grainy footage showed the alleyway behind her apartment. She saw the van. She saw the gunman Dominic had shot. "Wait," Maya said, pointing at the screen. "Zoom in, on the gunman's wrist." Dominic frowned but tapped a key. The image enlarged. On the dead gunman's wrist, just visible below the black tactical sleeve, was a tattoo. A small green snake coiled around a dagger. Dominic went still. The glass in his hand cracked, shattering from the force of his grip. Whiskey and blood dripped onto the desk. "You know that symbol?" Maya asked. "It's not a symbol," Dominic whispered, his voice turning into a growl. "It's a unit patch, a specific mercenary group. The Copperheads. So. Dominic turned to her, his eyes blazing with a cold fury she had never seen before. "They don't work for money. They work on retainer. They are the private hit squad for the cartel in Mexico. Why would the cartel want you dead?" "They don't," Dominic said. "We have a truce, a very profitable truce. If they are hitting me, it's because someone inside Chicago paid them double to break the truce." He picked up his phone. He dialed a number. "Silas," Dominic said into the phone. Maya watched him closely. "I'm alive," Dominic said, his eyes fixed on the dark lake outside. "The hit failed. No, don't come to the penthouse. I'm not there. I'm at the lake house. Yes. Come alone. We need to talk. He hung up. You trust him? Maya asked. I trust no one, Dominic said. But if Silas is loyal, I need him. And if he is the traitor... Dominic pulled a fresh magazine from a drawer and slammed it into his pistol. Then I need him close enough to put a bullet in his head. Grace spoke up from the window, her voice eerie and detached. The snake eats its own tail, Dominic. You know that. It always ends this way. Betrayal. Blood. Repeat. Dominic looked at his lost wife with a mixture of longing and pity. Go to sleep, Eleanor. There are bedrooms down the hall. Maya, go with your mother. I'm staying here, Maya said, crossing her arms. If someone is coming, I want to know. You are a civilian, Dominic snapped. This is not your world. It became my world the second you put me in that van, Maya shot back. And that's my mother. I'm not leaving her alone, and I'm not leaving this room until I know we aren't going to die tonight. Dominic stared at her. He saw the fire in her green eyes, Eleanor's eyes, but with his steel behind them. A strange pride swelled in his chest, warring with his fear for her safety. Fine, Dominic conceded, but you stay behind the desk. If shooting starts, you drop to the floor. Understood? Maya nodded. Understood. They waited. The storm outside intensified thunder, rattling the massive glass panes. 30 minutes later, the elevator chimed. Dominic raised his gun, leveling it at the doors. Behind the desk, Maya, he ordered. Maya crouched down, peeking over the edge of the heavy oak. The elevator doors slid open. Silas walked out. He was a tall man, lean and sharp, wearing glasses and a suit that looked uncomfortably perfect. He held his hands up, showing open palms. Dominic. Silas said, his voice smooth. Thank God. When I heard the chatter about the apartment. He took a step forward, then stopped. He looked at Dominic's gun. Then he looked past Dominic, his eyes landing on Grace, who had refused to leave the room and was sitting in the corner shadows. Silas's face went slack. It was the look of a man seeing a ghost. Elena, Silas whispered. Hello, Silas, Grace said, her voice dripping with venom. You look older. The guilt must be aging you. Silas looked back at Dominic. You found her. After 20 years. I found her, Dominic said, keeping the gun trained on Silas's chest. And 10 minutes later, a hit squad found us. A squad carrying copperhead tattoos. Silas's eyes widened behind his glasses. Dominic, you can't think. Give me one reason why I shouldn't pull this trigger, Silas. You knew the schedule. You knew I was vulnerable tonight. I didn't know about her, Silas shouted, pointing at Grace. If I wanted you dead, I would have done it years ago. Why would I wait until now? Because a new voice spoke up. Maya stood up from behind the desk. Silas looked at her, and his confusion deepened. He looked from Maya to Grace, then to Dominic. The resemblance was undeniable. Who is this? Silas asked. I'm his daughter. Maya said, her voice ringing clear in the large room. And you're lying. Excuse me, Silas bristled. You're lying, Maya repeated. You acted surprised to see my mother, but when you walked in, you didn't look at my father's wound. You didn't look at the gun. You looked straight at the corner where she was sitting. You knew she was here before you saw her. Dominic's eyes narrowed. He realized she was right. Silas had scanned the room for her immediately. Smart girl, Silas said. His posture changed. The smooth, worried friend vanished. His shoulders squared and a cold, arrogant sneer replaced his concern. He lowered his hands. "She has your eyes, Dom," Silas said casually. "And unfortunately your luck." "Silas," Dominic warned, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Don't bother," Silas said, tapping his ear. "I didn't come alone, and I didn't come to talk." Suddenly the lights in the penthouse cut out, plunging them into darkness. The red emergency lights bathed the room in a bloody glow. "Get down," Dominic roared. The glass wall overlooking the lake exploded inward as rappel lines smashed through, carrying men in black tactical gear, swinging in from the roof above. The lake house, a marvel of modern architecture, instantly transformed into a jagged hellscape. When the glass wall shattered, the roar of the storm outside merged with the deafening thwack, thwack, thwack of tactical boots hitting the floor. The wind howled through the breach, scattering papers and sending the heavy curtains whipping violently like ghosts in a frenzy. "Move!" Dominic roared, firing 3 rounds into the darkness toward the swinging figures. One mercenary jerked mid-air, his line snapping, sending him crashing onto the glass coffee table below. Silas had vanished the moment the lights cut out. He was a rat who knew when the ship was sinking, even if he was the one blowing the holes in the hull. Maya grabbed her mother's arm. Grace was screaming a high, thin sound that pierced through the cacophony of gunfire. "Mom, we have to go," Maya yelled, dragging her behind the overturned oak desk. Bullets chewed into the wood, sending splinters flying into Maya's hair. She crouched low, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She looked at Dominic. He was pale, his dress shirt matted with fresh blood, where his stitches had likely torn, but his hand was steady as he reloaded. "The elevator is compromised," Dominic shouted over the noise. "We have to take the stairs to the boathouse. There are 5 men between us and the stairs," Maya shouted back, peeking around the edge of the desk. She saw the laser sights cutting through the dust-choked air, searching for targets. Dominic looked at her. In that chaotic strobe light of muzzle flashes, he didn't see a waitress anymore. He saw a survivor. He reached into his ankle holster and pulled out a backup weapon, a small, snub-nosed revolver. He slid it across the floor to her. "Do you know how to use this?" Maya stared at the cold metal. "I played video games. I've never held a real one." "Point. Squeeze. Don't close your eyes," Dominic instructed grimly. "If anyone comes around this desk who isn't me, you pull the trigger until it clicks. Do you understand?" Maya's hand shook as she picked up the gun. It was heavier than she expected. "Okay." "Cover me," Dominic yelled. He didn't wait for her to agree. He surged up from behind the desk, drawing fire. The mercenaries, expecting a cowering target, were slow to react to the aggression. Dominic dropped 2 of them with precise shots to the head before diving behind a white leather sofa. The suppression fire gave Maya an opening. "Mom crawl now." They shimmied across the floor, the expensive Persian rug scratching their knees. A mercenary wearing the copperhead patch vaulted over the kitchen island, flanking them. He raised his rifle, aiming directly at Grace. Maya didn't think. She didn't breathe. She raised the snub-nose revolver with both hands, just like she'd seen in movies, and squeezed the trigger. The recoil jarred her arms all the way to her shoulders. The gun barked loudly. The bullet went whoot, shattering a vase, but it startled the mercenary enough to make him duck. "Keep moving," Dominic shouted, laying down cover fire that forced the man back. They reached the heavy steel door of the stairwell. Dominic punched in a code, and the lock disengaged with a heavy clank. He shoved Grace and Maya through, then turned back to fire one last magazine into the living room, to slow the pursuit. He slammed the door and shot the electronic keypad sparks showering down. "That will hold them for 2 minutes. Move!" They descended the concrete stairs, the air growing colder and damper as they went underground toward the lake level. "Why is Silas doing this?" Maya gasped, supporting her mother's weight. "He's your friend." "He was never my friend," Dominic growled, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "He was waiting. He wants the chair, and he thinks with me dead, the commission will hand it to him." "But why us?" "Because of the ring," Grace spoke up. Her voice was surprisingly steady. The panic attack had receded, replaced by a cold, hard focus. "He doesn't just want the power, Maya. He needs the money, and I'm wearing the key." They burst out onto the dock. The wind off Lake Michigan was brutal, whipping the rain into their faces. A sleek speedboat bobbed violently in the dark water. "Get in," Dominic commanded. As they scrambled aboard, the stairwell door behind them blew open with an explosive charge. "Go, go, go!" Dominic yelled, untying the stern line. Maya jumped into the pilot's seat. "I don't know how to drive a boat. It's a throttle and a wheel," Dominic shouted, jumping in as bullets pinged off the fiberglass hull. "Push the stick forward and steer." Maya slammed the throttle down. The engines roared to life, and the boat lurched forward, throwing them all back against the seats. They tore out into the black void of the lake, the lights of the lake house shrinking behind them. But they weren't safe yet. "They're following," Grace pointed astern. 2 other boats, their spotlights cutting through the rain, were peeling out from the neighboring docks. Silas had anticipated the escape. "They're faster than us," Dominic assessed, looking at the wake. He looked at Maya. "Head for the pier. We lose them in the city." "We won't make it to the city," Maya yelled over the wind. "They'll catch us in open water." Dominic looked at his daughter, then at the ring on Grace's finger. He made a decision. "Stop the boat," Dominic said. "What?" "I said, stop the boat." Maya pulled the throttle back. The boat settled into the choppy water. The pursuing spotlights were getting larger, closing in fast. "Dad, are you crazy?" Maya screamed. "Listen to me." Dominic grabbed Maya's face with his good hand. "Silas wants me. He wants the ring. If we stay together, we all die. I'm going to draw them off." "No." Grace grabbed his arm. "Dominic, you can't. You're bleeding out." "I have enough fight left for this," Dominic said, his eyes intense. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. "Maya, take your mother. Swim to the shore. It's only 200 yards that way. Hide in the forest preserve. Wait for my signal." "I'm not leaving you," Maya cried, tears mixing with the rain on her face. "You have to," Dominic said softly. "You're the only good thing I've ever done. I'm not letting you die in a lake." He kissed her forehead, a brief, desperate contact, and then pushed her toward the side. "Go." Maya looked at him one last time. She saw the resolve of a man who had spent 20 years mourning a ghost, now willing to trade his life to keep that ghost alive. She grabbed Grace's hand. "Come on, Mum." They jumped into the freezing black water. As they swam away, fighting the waves, Maya looked back. She saw Dominic rev the engine of the boat. He turned it around, facing the oncoming pursuers. He flicked the lights on, making himself a beacon. Then he charged straight at them. Maya and Grace lay shivering in the underbrush of the forest preserve, their clothes soaked and heavy with lake water. From their vantage point, they had watched the firefight on the water. It had been brief and violent. An explosion had lit up the horizon, a ball of orange fire that was quickly swallowed by the dark sky. Grace was weeping silently, clutching the ring to her chest. "He's gone," Grace whispered. "He did it again. He chose the fire." "He's not dead," Maya said through chattering teeth. She refused to believe it. The man who had taken a bullet and kept walking wasn't going to die in a boat crash. We have to move. Silas will comb the shoreline. Where do we go? Grace asked, looking at her daughter. For the first time, the roles were fully reversed. The mother was the child, and the child was the leader. We go to the one place Silas won't look, Maya said, her eyes hard. The restaurant. 3 hours later, they were in the back office of Leonis. They had broken in through the delivery entrance. The restaurant was empty, the air still smelling of stale wine and truffle oil. Maya rummaged through the manager's desk until she found the first aid kit and a stark, staff-only jacket to replace her wet uniform top. "Why are we here?" Grace asked, wrapping herself in a tablecloth for warmth. "Because Dominic said the ring is a key," Maya said, pacing the small room. "Silas thinks he killed Dominic. He thinks he won. He's going to be celebrating. He's going to be careless." "What are you thinking, Maya?" "I'm thinking about what you said." Maya stopped pacing. "That the ring holds the money." Grace looked down at the gold signet. "Dominic told me once before everything went bad, that the family fortune wasn't in a bank. Banks leave trails. He said it was in the heart of the city." Maya frowned. "The heart of the city?" "He was romantic back then," Grace said with a sad smile. "He meant the old clock tower, the civic building. He bought it years ago." Maya's eyes widened. "The safety deposit vault in the basement of the civic building. That's the most secure facility in Chicago. Yes, and this ring, the crest, it fits the master lock." Maya's mind was racing. If Silas wanted the money, he would need the ring. If he thought Dominic was dead, he would be hunting Grace. "We have to make a deal," Maya said. "What? We call Tilas. We tell him we have the ring. We trade it for our lives." "He'll kill us the moment he sees us," Grace argued. "Not if we do it in public," Maya said, "and not if he thinks he has won." Suddenly, the office phone rang. Maya froze. It was the private line. Only the staff knew the number, or the owner. Maya reached out and picked up the receiver. "Hello." "I admire your tenacity, Maya." Silas's voice came through slick and gloating. Swimming to shore was smart. Hiding at the restaurant, predictable. "Where is my father?" Maya demanded. "Dominic." Silas chuckled. "He's currently floating in pieces in Lake Michigan. It's over, sweetie. I have the city. I have the men. All I need is the ring." "You want the ring?" Maya said, her voice dripping with a bravado she didn't feel. "Come and get it." "Oh, I will. My men are 2 minutes away." "If you come here, I'll swallow it," Maya lied. "Or I'll flush it, and you'll never get the vault open." There was a pause on the line. Silas knew the mechanism. Without the physical ring to complete the circuit in the lock, the vault would incinerate its contents. It was a fail-safe Dominic had installed. "What do you want?" Silas asked, his tone darkening. "I want out," Maya said. "I want a plane ticket for me and my mom. And I want Kur. You can have the city. You can have the empire. We just want to live." "A reasonable request," Silas purred. "Meet me at the civic building. 6:00 a.m. Bring the ring. I'll bring the tickets." "If I see one gun," Maya warned, "the ring disappears." "See you at dawn, Maya." The line went dead. Maya hung up. Her hands were shaking. "He's going to kill us," Grace said. "I know," Maya said. She looked at the wall where a framed photo of the restaurant staff hung. She looked at her own face in the picture, young, naive, holding a tray. "But he forgot one thing," Maya said softly. "What?" "He forgot that I've served coffee to every cop, judge, and politician in this city for 3 years. I know secrets, too." Maya grabbed the phone again. She didn't dial the police. She dialed a number she had memorized from a napkin a frantic investigative journalist had left on the table 6 a month ago. "Hello," a groggy voice answered. "This is Miller." "Mr. Miller," Maya said. "This is Maya from Leona's. You told me if I ever heard anything about the Cavallo crime family, I should call you." "I'm listening." The journalist's voice instantly sharpened. "I have the story of the century," Maya said, "but you need to bring a camera crew, live broadcast, to the Civic Building at 6 a.m. The dawn broke grey and cold over Chicago. The Civic Building, a Gothic monolith of stone, stood imposing against the skyline. The plaza in front of the building was empty, save for a black limousine parked near the fountain. Maya walked into the plaza alone. She wore her waitress uniform, clean-pressed and familiar. It was her armor. Grace was hiding in the nearby subway entrance, watching. Silas stepped out of the limousine. He wore a camel hair coat and looked every bit the new king of Chicago. 2 massive bodyguards flanked him. "You look tired, Maya," Silas called out, his voice echoing off the stone. "I've had a long night," Maya said, stopping 10 feet away. She held her hand up. The gold ring glinted on her pinky finger. Silas's eyes locked onto the gold. Greed, naked and ugly, flashed across his face. "Give it to me," Silas said, extending his hand, "and the plane tickets are yours." "Show me the tickets first," Maya said. Silas snapped his fingers. One of the guards pulled an envelope from his jacket. "See," Silas smiled. "I keep my word." "You killed my father," Maya said, not moving. "You betrayed him for money." "I did what was necessary." Silas shrugged. Dominic was getting soft. He was obsessed with the past, obsessed with your mother. A leader needs to look forward. "Is that why you hired the Copperheads?" Maya asked, her voice raising slightly. "Is that why you laundered money through the shipping yards? Is that why you ordered the hit on the district attorney last week?" Silas frowned. "You ask too many questions. Give me the ring." "Answer me," Maya shouted. "Did you kill the DA?" "Yes," Silas snapped, losing his patience. "I killed the DA. I killed Dominic. And if you don't hand that ring over in 5 seconds, I'm going to kill you right here in the street." "Got it," a voice crackled from a speaker. Suddenly, floodlights blinded them. From behind the pillars of the Civic Building, news vans pulled out. Cameras were rolling. The investigative journalist Miller stepped out with a microphone. "Did you get that?" Miller shouted to his cameraman. "Every word, live to the morning news." Silas froze. He looked around, his face draining of color. He had just confessed to a high-profile murder on live television. "You," Silas snarled at Maya. "You bitch!" He reached into his coat for his gun. Crack! A single shot rang out. Not from the police, not from the guards. It came from the roof of the adjacent building. Silas screamed and dropped to his knees, clutching his hand. His gun skittered across the pavement. A bullet had gone clean through his wrist. Maya looked up at the roof. She saw a silhouette against the rising sun. A man with one arm in a sling, holding a rifle with his good hand. Dominic. He hadn't died in the lake. He had survived. He had followed. And he had protected her. Sirens wailed in the distance. The police, alerted by the broadcast, were closing in. Silas's bodyguards, realizing the game was up, threw their weapons down and raised their hands. Maya walked up to Silas, who was groaning on the ground. She looked down at him. She took the ring off her finger. "You wanted this?" she whispered. She dropped the ring into the fountain next to them. It splashed into the water, sinking to the bottom among the pennies and wishes. "Go fish," she said. 3 months later. The small cafe in Paris was miles away from the grime of Chicago. The air smelled of croissants and strong coffee. Maya tied her apron, a new one, green and crisp. She placed a cappuccino on table 4. Merci, the customer said. Maya smiled. De rien. She walked back to the counter. Sitting at the corner table was a man reading a newspaper. His left arm was still stiff, healing from a gunshot wound. His hair was silver, but the tension that used to live in his shoulders was gone. Across from him sat a woman with grey hair, looking healthier than she had in years. Her dementia was managed, the stress of hiding gone. Dominic Cavallo folded his newspaper. He looked at Maya. Shift is almost over, he said. Almost, Maya said. Are you sure about this? Dominic asked. We have the resources. You don't have to work. You could go to university. You could travel. I like the work, Maya said, wiping down the counter. It keeps me grounded. Besides, someone has to make sure you two don't get into trouble. Grace laughed, reaching out to hold Dominic's hand. The ring was gone, but a simple gold band had replaced it. We're retired, Maya, Grace said. No more trouble. Maya looked at her parents, the mob boss and the runaway wife. They were just people now. Flawed, scarred, but together. She looked out the window at the Eiffel Tower in the distance. She wasn't Maya Linley anymore. She wasn't Maya Cavallo either. She was just Maya. And for the first time in her life, the future didn't look like a threat. It looked like a menu. And she could order whatever she wanted. One more coffee, Dad? She asked. Dominic smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. Yes. Please. And that is how a waitress brought down an emir with a glass of water and 6 words. It wasn't the bullets or the money that saved them in the end. It was the courage to face the truth.